System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.
This is Amin TMK for Inner City Left. I'm here with co-founder of Inner City Left, my co-contributor, MFA, and political expert, Amoja Lil Tanky Sumler. Amoja, my guy, earlier today, Joe Biden resigned from the his re-election campaign. He's not going to be running anymore. What are your... I'm just going to say, what are your initial thoughts to this?
I mean, so much. The Democrats did. The first thing that I have to say is so important is so there's a power. So many. All right. So a power play is definitely being run. We know that. We've seen all of the signs. And the fact that we know that there's a game behind the throne lets us know a lot of things. And in fact, the most important thing is it lets us know that we really don't know anything yet. We know what they said reluctantly after an hour. I do think about, once again, Zelensky curse, one more person that bet it all on Ukraine, and Zelensky has lost their job. Or conversely is losing their job. But the Democrats did them to themselves. If they would have simply had, and you can only run the scheme so many times, right? 2020, the reason why people held their nose and voted for Joe Biden, a person that ideologically lots of people had huge issues with, and it's just important to acknowledge this is
true.
We
had a podcast literally entitled "I Will Not Vote for Joe Biden." This was
I just don't understand the Shangri-La they've tried to paint about this man. He was a horrible person. He was a segregationist. He literally funded Nazi armies all across, Europe. I mean, what more do you need? He's funded a genocide. He was not going to win. If they would have kept the playbook honest, which the Democrats are just incapable of doing, say that he is our stopgap candidate, and we're going to do everything we can to primary him and figure out who is the real voice, who really represents what the aesthetics of the Democratic Party are in 2024. He's just a band. If they would have done that, they'd be in such a better position. Those are my first thoughts. And
I mean, it's easy. It's easy to say what the Democrats should have done because, I mean, obviously they were just going to run with this until
the wheels
fell off.
And the wheels fell off in public,
And there's so many thoughts I have surrounding this. Number one is you gaslit the American people for 2 years while this person was going through whatever. I'm not a doctor. I don't want to diagnose him, and I don't care.
He looked unwell. I know that. He looked unwell.
He's whatever you want to, he's not fit to have a job, period. He should be on disability.
Especially not a job that important to the world.
No job. I don't think that person should have a single job. Those people are disabled. In Norway, they have a whole town for people with dementia. And that town, they specifically go in there and they make sure that everyone is safe within that. And that is what someone with dementia should be doing. They gaslit us for a year and a half. They forced everyone out of the idea of a primary, leaving RFK Jr., who is, I don't know, I don't follow him, but every time I hear something in the news about him, it's something absurd, like worms are eating his brain. And Marianne Williamson, who has a ton of issues. And
right.
That's basically what you had to choose from. So much so that the uncommitted votes were, in many areas, the number 2 candidate, if not close to Biden himself. So you gaslit us and said he was fine. You didn't allow him to run. Now, just like in the last 2 Democratic primaries, you're going to just pick who you want because the American people wanted Bernie Sanders. Say what you want about him, that they say they wanted him. That's what democracy is. You're supposed to be able to vote for the person that you want. They wanted Bernie Sanders. We talk a lot about what they did to Bernie during the Hillary Clinton Trump presidential run, but we don't really talk about the way that they did even this previous one. I mean, but Joe Biden was in 5th place. Kamala Harris was not on the map.
Right.
And basically they told the Cherokee Princess and whoever else was running to bow out. And that because they knew that Biden was going to get that on Super Tuesday. He did, just like the plan. And, you rigged an election again. So here we are. What democracy?
I mean, again, you can go back to our podcast because before the primaries even ran in 2020, if you'll remember, part of the Trump impeachment case was him shaking down Zelensky to get an oath of loyalty from Zelensky, right? Trump, because he knew that the Bidens were already in bed with the Ukrainian process, and he felt like he was about to be betrayed, right? So like the primary hadn't even really gotten off well, but in the impeachment trials, it's already a matter of public record that Donald J. Trump knew that his candidate was going to be Joe Biden. He was, you know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, look, you have to remember that the Democratic Party is a corporation, okay? And it has been ruled from the Supreme Court that as a club slash membership corporation, that they get to make decisions ultimately, right? That's the whole super delegate thing. Like, your opinion is taken into consideration, but at the end of the day, the super delegates decide, right? So like, who you vote for in the primary has always just been we'll take it into consideration. I just want to say, though, here's another thing about their primary situation that's so incredible. And I'm sure this goes to the Republicans as well, but it costs so much to campaign that you're one and done, that's it. So you don't see all of these guys that should be in the wings waiting for a moment like this, Al Gore, Howard Dean, who else? Beto O'Rourke. These guys don't even have the money anymore to go in, right? Even though they're brands that Americans understand, right? You don't love them, you don't hate them, but it's a brand. It's just like American politics is all about branding. At this point, you have to have a brand out there that already works so that you can sell it to the American people. But the Democrats have done no such job. In fact, they've stained their brands. We've been talking about it for months. AOC is stained. Bernie is stained. And so it just leaves more questions than it answers.
What kind of world are we in where the AOCs and the Bernie Sanders have been campaigning for Joe Biden over the last year and a half?
Harder than Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. And once again, it shows you where, not to be all, what's his name, on Game of Thrones, power is where people believe the power resides, right? People thought AOC and Bernie stood for the power of the Democratic Party. But the reality is the Clintons have power. The Obamas have power. The Pelosi's have power. The Schumers have power, right? And most of those voices, I'm hearing some back and forth on the Hillary thing, but that's just because the Clintons are loyal to a fault, right? In public, at least. So of course, until the dead body shows up, politically speaking, they're gonna ride, rah, 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 this is our team, even if they're making plays behind the scene. And that's all I'm saying is, I don't think we've yet seen who the Democratic nominee is really gonna be. There is a power play that is happening right now behind the scenes. And of course, they have to say Kamala's our girl, but it took the president more than an hour to come back and publicly endorse her. He didn't want to go. He was kicked out, essentially dragging and screaming, up until 3 days ago, up until yesterday. He's still giving speeches saying nothing's going to make me quit. And then today he quits. If
Who quits on a Sunday?
Who quits on a Sunday, man? If they'd had a real primary, we'd have a pulse of what the Americans want, who they're liking, and these people would have had an opportunity to build their brand.
Last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, or 10 days ago, or something like that. Could have been less. What is time? It came out that Joe Biden had COVID, and he possibly still has it today.
Absolutely. And still not wearing a mask.
Right. You have, during his debate with Donnie J, there was this whole conversation he was trying to, or this whole narrative he was trying to lay out of, well, I opened the country back up. And under him, it was lockdowns and we did what we had to do. And he was bragging about that.
His argument was, I'm better for business than Donald J. Trump. Like, Americans need to think about that, because who's dying? It's not the billionaires. It's the poor people, the people that can't. You're on Medicare. It takes you 2 or 3 months sometimes to go and see a doctor. Rent is due Friday. How you gonna miss a day of work? Oh, it ain't that bad. I'll just go in. And then you're exposed to COVID again and again and again. You have 3 or 4 strains of COVID in you, debilitating you, taking just 1% of your life away every time. Just 1%. Not enough to notice, but enough to add up. Those are the people that died. And those are the people that continue to die under these kind of practices. That's why it's perversely ironic to see COVID, this thing that he's downplayed his entire presidency, be a major contributor to, again, right? Let's not say it killed his presidency. Let's say it contributed. And we don't know how many points it is. It's more than 1 point, though. Let's say that he was suffering from COVID during the middle of the, let's say he's not mentally declining and he was just in COVID fog, okay, during the debates. That's still not the flex you think it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm so sorry, but as an American, I understand that the importance of a symbol, and the president is nothing if not a symbol. The president can never look weak, old. You are the representation of America. When they see you, they think about America in those terms. They think about America as weak. They think about America as old. The state itself cannot afford that.
I was, you talked earlier about the Zelensky curse. I told you when I was doing some errands and runs, I was down by DuPont Circle, and there's a lot of embassies around there, and a lot of the embassies that are around that were like the European embassies. Every single European embassy had a flag of Ukraine up, as well as a NATO flag. We're seeing, now, this Ukraine conflict has taken so much out of the, American, political conversation, and is taking so much money and has had so much backlash. And you really got to kind of look like, obviously Joe didn't want to leave, but he's also kind of just washing his hands of this global crisis that he created. Not to mention, the G-side in Palestine right now. I'm just ask you this question before you jump in there. Is what is this? What is Joe Biden's presidential legacy?
It's Ukraine. It's Ukraine even more than the failure in Palestine, because that would have happened whoever was there. And this is another thing that people that vote Democrat need to understand. If you think that what's happening in Gaza would have been any different under Bernie Sanders, you're just woefully wrong. So I can't even put Gaza on him. He's just a guy that was there when it happened. I think his legacy is the failed war in Ukraine. It was a war of choice. It was a silly war. And it's just complete hubris, right? It comes from this hubristic place of just wanting to teach Russia a lesson and keep them in their place. It's misunderstanding what you mean to the scene, right? He went out there and he said, all right, we're going to boycott Russia. Yeah, well, Europe did. Well, why would South America do that when they understand they've been under the gun of sanctions too? They understand how the United States is with this, and why would they take that seriously? Hell, half of them are under sanctions. You think they're definitely not going to trade with Russia now? Like now, you know what I'm saying? Africa, how many coups can you pull in a 50-year, status of time? It's just, so of course there's no love lost there. At best, you do what you can because you're afraid if you don't, they'll get rid of you and take your government away, right? But when the chips are down, you're looking for a way out. So, of course, and also self-interest rules all. The first rule of geopolitics, which must be said over and over again, is there are no permanent allies, only permanent interests. No matter, I might want to be rich, but if I am from whatever country, there is some part of me, some small part of me, maybe, that wants to see my country do good, And when an opportunity presents itself, I'm going to take that. So you're telling me the Chinese are offering to come in. They're not going to put no military bases up in my country. They're going to give me all this financing that I can never get unless I do all these austerity acts and not do any social projects for the people, right? If I take the money from the IMF, right? Of course you're going to do those things, right? So like now you're being told, oh, you have to sanction Russia who's donating all this wheat to you every year. You're not going to do it. Meanwhile, China's seen right through it because China understood they were the real target, and Russia wanted to the West wanted to test these kind of crippling sanctions on a big country before they tried it on China, right? But just the hubris of assuming that everybody in the world would go along with this because the United States said so, and only Europe did it, and Europe went into recession, and Europe is more energy insecure than they've ever been in their last 30 years. Cheap oil is gone. And with the cheap oil, went their booming economies. And now you come to find out, oh, Europe isn't just fucking geniuses. They've been subsidized by raw materials at dirt cheap prices. And they've been able to create an economy that's all based on services and manufacturing because you're getting all of the raw materials for next to nothing. Now that's gone. Now you got to pay. You got to pay way more than you normally would. And you got to pay it right now. So those economies are gone. All of those people, they look at Joe Biden. They say, you did this. You led us into this, right? And that's when you talk about Ukraine is really about to get tumultuous. When you have Zelensky breaking protocol and you straight up, see, this Friday, Zelensky talked to Trump, right? Like, Biden is the dude that made your whole shit pop. Biden did everything for you. And now you've betrayed him because you realize he's gone. And real politic is, I need to understand what the terms are of the probable next person that's about to be in there. So when your patrons, the people that you have been taking care of, your client regime, they don't look up to you anymore, right? It was completely obvious and avoidable. His legacy is Ukraine. That's what he cannot escape. He made a lot of money, but he destroyed the Democratic Party in the process. And, hey, if you're not a Democrat, that's not the worst news in the world.
We mentioned. I was mentioning the primaries, basically for the Democrats being non-existent. There was no official debates. We saw that on the Republican side, it was basically the losers debating each other. And Trump didn't participate in any of the debates. We now went through one debate with Biden and Trump, and now Biden is, bowing out. We now are going to have two candidates who we really have not heard, in the formal debate capacity in quite some time. How can America look at other places and question people's democracy and question their elections when basically they've just gerrymandered, these primaries again? If I'm a Democratic voter or a Republican voter, I should be outraged that I don't get to have debates and real questions being asked. And now we're going to ask the American people again to go out here and vote for basically, a demagogue or some hand-picked person by the richest neoliberals you've ever met and ever known. What does this say about American democracy? And we talked a lot about the, but what about the social aspects? What about America, the shining whatever town?
It's just a Band-Aid coming off. That's all it is. And that's the way you have to look at it, right? Again, I'm a big Cui Bono fan. I ask myself all the time, who gains, right? I think that's just really important. So there were two things that came together to keep us from having debates in a Democratic primary. Let's first look at the Aristotle clause. The most efficient clause was the Democrats didn't want that to happen because the agenda that the Democrats had at that time was lockstep with what the agenda that Joe Biden was able to deliver. He was a person that in that way didn't really have an ego. He did what the party did, just so long as he made his money, his family was good, and he had to say, I'm the president. He didn't have an ego the way like Trump or Obama or even Clinton have an ego. You know what I'm saying? Like he was just there to get it done. The second thing is they must have known already that the mental acuity was on decline. Because if I got to win a card, I'm going to play it. I'm a spades player. If I got to win a card, I'm going to play it. I want you to challenge me. Step up. If they knew that Biden could win, they would have put him in the primaries. The fact they didn't put him in the primaries means they knew he couldn't win. Like, and they didn't want him exposed early. They did everything they could to protect him. I mean, it's real weekend at Bernie stuff. They just thought they could just wheel his ass over the fucking finish line, and then get it worked out, sorted out after that. That's not planning. You can't. If this is the way you run your party, like, why would I want you to run the country this way? Again, this is not a endorsement for Republicans at all. You know what I'm saying? The point is, you have to be honest about what the Democrats did and why it's blowing up spectacular in their face. To your point about who's going to be appointed, I say again, we have no idea who the real candidate is going to be because the Democratic National Convention is coming up and those things can be wild. This is going, you're hearing it here first. And if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm fucking savvy. It's going to be a contested convention. And we haven't seen one of those in a very long time. It's going to be real House of Cards shit. And my bet is the person that's going to end up the Democratic nominee for president, they haven't made their big play yet. It's going to be like the Pope. They're going to float some names out. You're going to hear Hillary Clinton. You're going to hear Kamala Harris. They're going to say Michelle Obama, as ridiculous as that is, right? But and let me explain why I say it's ridiculous, okay? This is not about anybody's qualifications. This is about demographic realities. Like, Black people make up less than 13% of the United States of America. If every Black person in the world, or at least that has an American citizenship, voted for Michelle Obama, she wouldn't have enough votes to win. And white people are not going to vote for her. I'm just sorry. That's the truth, right? So that's a ridiculous thing to say. Like, oh, Michelle, that won't happen. She would lose worse than Walter Mondale did. This is the geopolitic real. Like, we tell you the real stuff on this channel. We don't sugarcoat it. The person that's going to get the nominee is no one that's been put on a major stage yet. It's going to be a lot like the Pope thing. They're going to float some names, see how they work, and then they're going to give a consensus pick, and that's going to be the person they wanted all along. I suspect it's probably Gavin Newsom out of California. That sounds like a person they would do. But again, if the Democrats are serious about this, right, and they were just thinking about brands, they would hitch their wagon behind Kamala right now. And because, again, you have to have a white person on that ticket, probably a white man, right, to demonstrate a token of goodwill to the American public. She would announce, oh, Bernie's going to be my backup guy. So you'll have your progressive, liberal, old Jewish grandpa, right? That's your nod to Israel, all of those things. Even though, again, he's a damaged candidate right now. He doesn't have any of the love that he had, not a fraction of the love he had in 2016 or 2020.
Yeah,
and it was the Democrats that tore him down.
Yeah, he sort of lost that. Something I was thinking about earlier today is in other countries they do something called snap elections. We saw that in
Iran just had it.
Iran, they had their president. Yeah, they had their president do that as well. And again, if we were talking about democracies and we're talking about like what it means to have a representative democracy where people are, in a larger structure to make laws and things like that. Why can't the United States, which, is one of the most capable countries in the world with technology, ability to make big things happen very quickly, and, at least in terms of, their money and all those things. Why can't we live in a country where we have snap elections where there's something specific like this happens and it just has to come to a vote for the people?
Cui bono, because the government couldn't predict the winner. And it's always important to have a really good idea who might be running this thing. You know what I'm saying? Again, if America was really this bastion of democracy, we'd all vote for our candidates on the phone. You can make a bank loan on the phone. It can biometrically read your eye print, it can authenticate your voice. It can take your thumbprint. It can absolutely certify 1,000% you are who you say you are. It can geopolitically, it can, GPS? It knows your exact positioning, right? I mean, you can pay your taxes on your phone.
We just had someone shoot at the president of the United States, and everything about that person including how much money they paid to someone on OnlyFans. I mean, all that information comes
It's
out.
out there.
You're telling me you don't know that
So
this
if
is a
America
person
was
that's voting? And again,
truly
even
interested,
before,
absolutely. And the fact that that doesn't happen, right, in the most technologically advanced country in the world, the fact that I can't have a government vote app, right? Every American with a phone has it. Boom, it authenticates me. Boom, this is who I pick. Boom, right? They don't have that because they don't want that. They want the mess. They want it to be something that is made to look trickier than it is, and that's just the bottom line. At the end of the day, if they wanted to be more efficient, it would be. But what's most important right now, as it stands, is that this Republican or this Democrat gets in. They cannot allow chaos in the system. And this isn't conspiracy theory talk. There's Jesse Ventura, the Navy SEAL, the wrestler, all of that, the big personality. When he was the governor of Minnesota, he talked about in his book, he got visited by Langley, and Langley had to sit down with him because they wanted to understand how, against all the odds, this person who was extremely well known, he was on television with the WWF, back then, whenever the WWF, right? He was on every week. He was a Navy SEAL. He served his country. Like, he was what they would call a traditional hero, but even he was never supposed to be a guy that actually ended up being the governor, right? They're not going to let that happen with a president, You just don't even hear about genuine third-party candidates anymore, and it's not that long ago, right? In 2000, you had, who was the guy? He was the Lebanese politician. He's an American, but he has of Lebanese descent. He was the first person to talk. Ralph Nader in 2000, right? And he got it before that with the Clintons. You had Ross Perot, right? With Reagan and Mondale, you had Jesse Jackson, right? It wasn't that long ago that you would have third-party candidates and at least their voices, but that's gone. There's not even the choice of that anymore, right? So, it's a mess right now because it's meant to be a mess. And that I guess that's my point. But this mess is going to cost the Democrats because I just don't see who they can pull out of their bag of tricks that's going to have right now what's happening with the Trump movement. He's in a messianic place now. I mean, people are looking at him like God saved Trump. You can't buy that kind of enthusiasm. No one's enthusiastic about the Democratic options. They haven't done a good job of building young future Democrats that are just waiting to take all of this. They destroy them. We talked for weeks about how AOC is old enough now. It should have been AOC. This whole thing should have been her learning the mechanisms of power so that in 2024 we could put a young, Afro-Latinx, woman up to be the face of intersectionality and excitement and progressivism. That's what they should have been doing. That's not what they did because that's not what the Democrats stand for. But they do want people that stand for those things to associate those things with Democrats and to vote for Democrats, even when the candidate themselves isn't necessarily a person that believes in those things. Bernie Sanders has campaigned for Democrats that are anti-abortion. Like, what do you stand for, bro? Like, what do you stand for? What is it? What does the Democratic Party stand for? And what does that mean in a real way, right? And right now, what they stand for is the military-industrial complex. But they've taken it into such a scary place now that even that's at risk. When we're looking at Russia aiming nuclear weapons at NATO countries, for a proxy war of choice, the train is off the track, man. The train is off the track.
Yeah, it's just another example of the deterioration of the United States, both politically, economically, and socially. I want to, if I can, give a shout out to our podcast listeners. What's up? We're everywhere you find podcasts. Like and subscribe, comment below if you're on YouTube. I want to give a shout to our Patreon members. You can support us on Patreon. You can see the information in the description below, as well as the little cool ticker that we have here. I want to give a shout out to our Patreon members. Jay Goulart, No Ground, Robbie, Paula, Lissa, Lauren, Suzette, Dennis. Much love. Any thoughts before we jump out of here, Tanky?
Someone got to tell y'all the truth. And Inner City Left has tried to do that for years. We're going to continue to try to do that because, look, I believe you have to treat people like adults. And that's just not what's happening in the news. Everybody out there, we told y'all for years. We've been on it for months telling you the Democrats are going to get smashed. Everybody wants... People want to misrepresent that because they don't represent what our goals are and see it as like bitter grape shit. And we're analysts. First and foremost, we are analysts. Y'all don't know how much work we put, how many hours we put into aggregating all this knowledge and bringing it to y'all. You know what I'm saying? So if you want the news you can trust, Inner City Left.
Yeah, well said. Much love. Amin TMK, Emoji Little Tanky Sumler. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.